Previously, I talked about badness of death to the person. A wealth of the literature is on this. Surprisingly, badness of death to other people receives much less attention. Perhaps because it's more intuitive. If a person dies, people depending on him, such as his spouse and children, lose their breadwinner. His employers or employees lose a labor. People connected or attached to him feel grief as the material and emotional investment in the person vanishes. He will never be able to provide any further returns. People are resources to other people, both material and emotional. Losing resources is considered bad. In this sense, losing or cutting a tie is not too much different from having that person dead. Of course, people may argue that rebuilding a tie is still possible in the former case, and sometimes the presence or absence of a tie may not be that clear-cut, which is quite related to what I argued about the difference between life and death, which is also not that clear-cut. But a more fundamental question is why we interact socially, or why we build the tie in the very beginning. So this time I'm going to talk about what resources we can get from other people and at what cost. And the short answer is we are not sure. Social interactions based on material resources are probably best illustrated by work or professionally related affairs. Consumers trade for goods and services from other people. Workers trade labor for money and benefits. These sound straightforward, but there are uncertainties in the actual practice due to information asymmetry. For example, you never know the quality or even the quantity of food and services of a restaurant before the actual trade. Of course, now online reviews may be available, and after the first trade, the restaurant establishes a track record in your database to guide your expectation. But these only serve as a guide based on trust and expectation, with some uncertainty. Arguably, this is worse than gambling, because you don't even know the ceiling and the floor, the best and the worst outcomes, whereas you know all possible events and the corresponding gains and losses in gambling. The restaurant situation is still not too bad, because a typical restaurant won't charge you too much, so you may accept the risk. Employment is tricky too. Although remuneration and work conditions are specified in the contract, the employees may not know the actual work environment, and the employer may not know the actual ability and work ethics of the employees. Appropriate assessments of job requirements, interviews, communication, and references may mitigate the risk, but still the ceiling and the floor are unknown. Probation may be set for both sides to assess the actual match and cut the loss if it is not right. But the loss is already sustained in this case. Social interactions primarily based on emotion or so-called bonding are even trickier. You may make friends with someone based on some superficial clues like first impression, educational and occupational background, hobbies, etc., so that you can hang out with them, exchange ideas, learn something, and satisfy your social need. But people can have a lot of different aspects obscured to you. Some are extraordinarily good to you, while some are extraordinarily bad to you. Again, no ceiling or floor can be expected. The trickier thing is people may not even be aware of what they are looking for in the friendship. It is a blind gamble and may demonstrate the psychology of an addicted gambler. People may be addicted to the unexpected good surprises without thinking about the costs and rewards, expected values, ceiling and floor, etc. They may get high with the unexpected good surprises and invest more, and paradoxically invest even more when they sustain losses or absence of rewards, as they believe the losses or absence of rewards are because they haven't invested enough. Some people say they like to make friends because they feel they can learn something from others. Yes, but without a clear learning objective, they are falling into this endless blind gamble. They don't even have a way to tell whether a certain person can offer anything for them to learn before the actual learning points pop up out of nowhere and become visible to them. Again, how much resources are you willing to invest for the unknown rewards from the friends? How are you going to tell the reasons for the losses or absence of rewards? Probably because of these questions, some people recommend us to set a bottom line, whether it is the time, materials, or emotion you are willing to invest before any visible returns. If there are no returns beyond this line, forget about it and cut the loss. But before even making a friend, how much are you going to invest to actually meet any potential targets? How do you know where you can meet the targets? How do you evaluate the probability of meeting the targets in that specific situation so that you can determine the risks and the costs you are willing to take? There seems to be no way for me to rationally evaluate making friends. Another typical relationship supposedly based on emotional bonding is family. Usually, family is considered as a more intimate and stable relationship. Marriage is when you have confidence that the relationship can stably and steadily deliver desired resources. Hopefully, both you and your partner have good communication so that information asymmetry is minimal. But other family relationships are similar to making new friends, as you can only imagine but not expect. The only reference is genetics and family background. But the risk is even greater because there are even more investment and dependence between members, and the establishment of the relationships is forced and often lifelong. So the so-called bottom line or cut the loss are even harder, if not impossible. Interestingly, the fact that blood ties are usually not the determining factor for the actual bonding further illustrates that the key is in the resources, investments, and memory dividends. Fortunately or not, the forced but stable relationships eventually allow time and experience for members to learn about the others and adjust their ongoing investment accordingly. As the relationships are forced, oftentimes you don't need to decide or pursue anything in this blind gamble. But at the same time, it's harder to escape. Some people told me to make new friends and play the social game. My question is, for what exactly? If I have a need or want, I may, but unlike the family situation where I have no choice, here I need to take initiative to decide and pursue new friends out of nowhere, and without specific rewards, expected values, and clear mechanisms. It is impossible for me to actively and strategically pursue an ill-defined, if not non-existent goal. I may calculate expected values, risks, rewards, and costs for a gamble or other rational games, but there is no way for me to do so in this social game. You need to bet on the leap of faith. It's worse than gambling, as the uncertainties in the potential resources and costs compromise the evaluation of rationale and worth of any social interactions. Those with fewer uncertainties are more rational to pursue. In this case, investing in capitalism, family, and possibly old friends are all more rational than making new friends.